guys started fall practice last week. Just how does it look so far?
We're only a few days in to fall camp, and it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun being around the guys. The guys that have laid the foundation, so to speak, have done a really nice job, and so it does feel like we're further ahead than we have been so far in the years at Oregon. And just from a starting point, it's a good starting point. It's a good place. You can tell that we're just a little further along in a lot of aspects.
What specifically are you guys further along with compared to years past for you?
Well, you've got guys that know what it's like to be in postseason play. They know what it's like they know the value of practice. They understand the value of doing things right in terms of details. They understand that those things are going to add up to wins. There's a certain level of hungriness now where they've tasted success, and now they want more and they want more and they want more, which is good. So we're just trying to keep it simple instead of worrying about the big picture. We're just trying to absolutely nail what we can, and that's just taking care of one day at a time.
Where do you feel like were areas of improvement over the offseason that you tried to tackle?
Physicality, pitching depth, and togetherness and camaraderie on the team, just to continue to build that in the program.
Any specific pitching depth, righty, lefty, does it matter?
Doesn't matter, just good over not so good.
Physicality, is that just time in the weight room with Daryl, or what does that look like?
Yeah, Daryl's really invested a lot of time in the weight room with these guys. Since COVID now, this is the first time our guys were able to come back early and report early with the full meal plan, the full experience, the full weight structure, and so we've seen big returns. The goal was before COVID, to have that sort of a program intact where when classes start and actual classes and practice start, then you're way ahead of the curve, and you've already had a month to 2 months of lifting and conditioning and training before you even really start classes. And in the past, due to COVID, we weren't able to do that. Now we are, which is definitely an assist. And then thank goodness our administration, from a financial standpoint, is funding that and has funded that better than any school that I'm aware of, and so our athletes are reaping the benefit.
Are there any guys who just really impressed you in the weight room in that regard?
Yeah. Owen Diodati, a transfer from Alabama, is really strong. He's been impressive to watch when it comes to strength in the weight room, but I think overall, when you look at the freshman class that we have, they're not small at all. They're really big human beings, and they're athletic and they're physical, and I think when you're watching batting practice, and we'll see if they can hit in games and all that kind of stuff, but in batting practice, it's been a lot of fun to watch what these kids are doing.
Especially as far as starting pitching goes, how does fall fit in terms of evaluation, progress? What are you going to look for these next couple months?
Well, we're going to roll 15 scrimmages out there that are open to the public. A lot of the scrimmages that we're going to have, specifically with 2 home football games, we'll have scrimmages that occur before the home football games. And so against Stanford, we play a football game at 8 p.m. when we get a chance to watch Coach Lanning's crew play against Stanford. And before that, we'll have a scrimmage that starts basically at 2:30, and it's open to the public. So the tailgaters and everybody, come on in. You can bring a beverage of your choice and hang out and watch a nice afternoon of baseball as you guys are tailgating. Those are going to be 2 opportunities we have to do, and it doesn't even matter if we start at 12:30 with a kickoff. If that happened one day, like it did this last weekend, then we'd start early and we'd go at 7 or 8 in the morning to where we can give our fans something to watch.
But those are big time evaluation periods for you guys too, in terms of assessing where guys are at.
Yeah, we take the fall seriously, really seriously, and there's a lot of depth out there right now, and so we've tried to maximize the number of at-bats. Playing outside competition is fun, but when you've got 20 new players, then you're really trying to maximize at-bats and innings pitched. And when you're playing outside competition, there's an opponent pitching for the other side and playing for the other side, so you lose half of the at-bats that you normally could get in a scrimmage situation. You also lose half of the innings pitched. So we're going to try to maximize all those things and really have a good full body of work by the end of the fall.
To piggyback on that, is that sort of the best way for you to manage such an extensive roster, is to see them, actually get out there and play? How do you manage that depth?
Heck yeah, because practice is one thing, and who can do it when the lights come on is big. And then I think, when we're with those 2 opportunities that I spoke on, those are great opportunities for our guys to play in front of fans, even though it isn't a probably a super rowdy environment or whatever. It's going to be a social tailgating type of an environment where fans can come and watch. Fantastic. And I imagine that we can get a lot of people from tailgate to come on in and see what we're doing on the baseball field this fall. It should be a lot of fun for our players.
This is a situation of a bit of circumstance, was, and that go back pre-COVID, a couple of years ago, there was the fight to add fall games from the coaches themselves, not just saying you specifically, but the push to get, I think, up to 7. To cut it down, is it that mainly because, like you talk about having 20 freshmen and just wanted to maximize the internal reps more than, is just kind of that circumstance?
Yeah, and it's not 20 freshmen, it's 20 players, but nevertheless, yes, it is. And so I'm thrilled that the NCAA has allowed us 2 additional competitions plus a competition versus a foreign entity, so to speak. And we'll play a Canadian national team this fall here at home. And other than that, we'll choose not to play any outside competition for what I talked about. But depending on the year, if it's a bunch of old guys and they're all coming back and, innings are maybe less important, then obviously you would play more outside competition and have some fun with that. This is just not that year.
You added 4 lefty arms in the offseason. They're all freshmen. Is there a specific roles you're looking at for them? Is one of the guys kind of in line to be a starter versus a reliever versus?
Yeah, too early to tell. They're all in line for whatever they earn.
Are there any new pitchers that have stuck out to you?
Yeah, a bunch. Yeah, so
Any
far.
specific?
There's probably about 4 or 5 that have jumped out. I mean, we're only a couple of bullpens in. Turner Spiljarek, his dad, Paul, I think, pitched in the major leagues for some time. So he's got a lineage and a bloodline. It looks like the game's fairly slow for him right now. Matthew Grabman, who is Team Canada's #1 pitcher. Those guys were 1 and 2 on Team Canada last year. And so that's a big win on a recruiting front to have those 2 quality arms in here. And there's a lot of other kids that are really doing well as well. But it's only a couple of bullpens in, and so it's not really a full body of work quite yet.
What are the qualities you're looking for when evaluating who could be a weekend starter?
Guys that can handle the game, command the fastball, throw more than 1 pitch for a strike, and just the mentality that you're looking for. I mean, we've got a saying that says, that's what it looks like. And so it's pretty simple. I think that it's, whether it's a head coach of a program or a media individual or even my wife, for goodness sakes, she knows what it looks like when it's done right, and she knows what it looks like when it's not done right. And so it's pretty obvious, I think, for fans, for coaches, for players, and we're just trying to teach these kids to do things right, compete in the right way, and the people that earn the jobs by the end of fall camp will have the best opportunities, and they'll be a little bit ahead of the pack when we come back from Christmas break.
What are some of the position battles that you're most looking forward to seeing kind of begin to flesh out here this fall?
Everywhere. It's awesome. I mean, it's awesome to watch out there. It isn't like we've got 1 guy at one spot and then we got 4 guys at another. I mean, everybody, whether they're old players and have played a bunch in the past or whether they're new players, boy, there's some battles going on out there. Now, the old players seem to have the edge in terms of just understanding the flow of things. So you watch a Gavin Grant, a Drew Calley, we're blessed to have those players back. But it's slower, it's slower for them. They've got their arms around it. There's a handle to them where maybe the young players are playing a little bit of a breakneck pace right now and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Everything's moving really quick for those guys. And so it's our job as coaches to help those guys slow it down. And when those guys do, as we've seen now specifically just this morning, when those young guys start slowing it down, boy, it gets fun to watch, and whether Dominic Hellman ends up playing shortstop for us or not, it's fun watching a kid who's 6'5" or 6 at shortstop who hits the ball over the batter's eye and over the scoreboard in batting practice, and we'll see if he can do it in games. But, that kind of physicality's out there, and the old players see it, and they can see that kind of talent. I think that's great for them to feel that push as we go, and the young players see the veteran leadership, and they know that those guys have been staples and played in postseason for 2 years in a row now.
Specifically for shortstop, just what are you looking for? And this is the first time in a couple of years that you have to replace Kasevich. So,
Yeah.
What are you more defensive oriented in that spot, and you'll give up the bat for defense up the middle, or?
Each one of these guys brings something different to the table, and Gavin Grant's really working to be our starting shortstop. Drew Calley's working to be the starting shortstop, and there's probably 3 other guys that are out there at least that are working to be the starting player. But that's across the board at each position. Boy, there's a lot of guys out there. Jackson Jaha is a freshman third baseman, great example, and he was drafted by the New York Mets, got a lot of money offered to him. And up until the last second, he didn't know if he was going to come to campus or not. And he's in a heck of a battle with the highest drafted player from a junior college ranks that showed up to any college campus, Sabine Ceballos from Puerto Rico. And those guys are over there with about 2 other guys too that are, each one of those guys are, I mean, just really playing well, and it's fun to watch. Doesn't look like we've got a lot of weak links on the early going at all, and it just looks like a lot of competition.
Obviously beneficial to have that kind of depth, but how challenging is it going to be for this coaching staff to be able to, put those lineups together?
Well, not very challenging there. When you see what it looks like, you can put those lineups together pretty good. Keeping everybody happy is always going to be a challenge when you've got depth. If you don't have depth, then that's, everybody knows who should play and everybody else is going to sit and watch. When you do have depth, that means you got a lot of good players. And so, yeah, we're going to need to do a good job at understanding how to build team culture to where it doesn't turn individual and selfish or stuff like that takes the team apart. But I think we're good at doing that. We've shown that we're good at doing that, and we're going to keep pushing team first over anything.
I know the hand injury kind of interrupted the season last year, but were you surprised that Drew didn't get a look in the draft?
Well, I think his hand injury derailed him, when he's the beginning of the Pac-12 season, and, that's when his hand gets broken on that check swing at Stanford, or the first swing that he took on Friday night against Stanford. I think that's tough. I think that's tough for a player. Was I surprised that I'm never surprised about the draft. I mean, some things happen where a guy gets drafted super high and you're surprised, and sometimes, Matthew Grabman didn't get drafted, but yet he was Team Canada's #1 guy and he's up to 97 miles an hour. He's plenty good enough to get drafted, but getting drafted doesn't necessarily indicate how good a guy is with his talent. A lot of times signability plays into a factor, and other things come into factor. And when a kid tells the scouts, if you take care of me at X level, then I would be interested in playing pro ball, and if not, I know I can come back and develop my skills more at Oregon, and I want to be a part of something special. We haven't gotten to Omaha yet, and that's on the map. We really value that in our locker room, and a lot of these guys, Tanner Smith is returned specifically for that reason, and the hunger in his eyes is awesome to see. And so, just trying to build a program.
And the big picture was a couple of issues that we've chatted about for years now, but the transformation committee is sometime in the next month or so potentially going to be opening the door to folks like you to do some things that would be rather revolutionary for equivalency sports, whether it be lifting the cap on staff and also for equivalency being head count, potentially. Any informative conversations yet about what this could mean for you folks in January, literally, or February when some of this stuff can be finalized if they end up pushing it through?
Decisions for people above me. I don't understand it. I know that the more coaches that we can put out there for student athletes, the better prepared they'll be. And for me, it's all about the student athlete. And so the better we can help them in their careers, we should be trying to do that. If we're turn it into, we have an unlimited supply of scholarships and stuff like that, that's an indication that our game's healthy and there's an interest in our game, and a lot of people like college baseball. You see the growth in our game, it's ridiculous. The numbers that they're turning right now in the College World Series with attendance and profits, it's ridiculous, and that's because the product is really good. So I'm not surprised when the Transformation Committee starts addressing those issues, because the game is so healthy, the players are at such a level where it's so good, and why wouldn't you want to take care of somebody and give a guy an opportunity, especially a kid that might not be able to afford college baseball. And for all these years, a really big scholarship for a college player is a 70% scholarship. Well, there's a lot of kids that even with the biggest scholarship at a 70% level, they still can't afford to come and play baseball, and they choose to go in other directions and play other sports. Maybe the Transformation Committee has recognized that and now opens up doors for these, for not only people that can afford it, but for all people to jump into this thing and get compensated at a very high level, where it's not taking money out of mom and dad's pockets, whether they got it in there or not. And now we continue to see the growth of our game. That ultimately is, I think, what they're trying to do. And I commend the people on top that are pushing for the changes that are going to work for our student athletes' well-being.